Hello everybody, welcome to Clay Talk. I am Suzette, I'll be your host today, and today we're going to be making this cute little mobile phone holder, and we're going to be making that with Creative Paperclay. I'm just going to wait a few minutes for more people to join, and then we will get started. Alright, I'm going to get started. There are a couple of us here. For those who are late, this video will be on our Facebook page anyway. So let's get started. This is the mobile phone holder. It's actually quite cute, and even with my phone case on, it fits quite nicely, and my phone stands up quite nicely in it. So, and this is with a thick life-proof case on. So that is actually pretty cool. So I'm going to show you how to make this. It's a very quick and easy project. It really doesn't take a lot. And for this, we're going to be using our Creative Paperclay. We're also going to be using, for the texture that's in it, this is a texture sheet. They're made for polymer clay. If you look in the polymer clay section of your art store or online, you should be able to find these. I don't remember what brand this is because I've had this for quite a long time. You'll also be needing some kind of rolling pin, whether it's this one or, once again, the small one, made for polymer clay. That's fine as well, whichever one you're more comfortable working with. So that's to make it. And then to decorate it, we're going to be using this paint by Folk Art, which is made by Plaid Crafts, and it's turquoise and it's a matte finish, but that's neither here nor there because we are actually adding some acrylic glaze and liquid to it, and this is in satin. This is by Golden Mediums. There are many brands, Liquitex and stuff, and it's what gives it this nice glaze without losing the pigment of the paint. If you don't have the glaze, don't run out and buy it. What you can do is just dilute your paint. It might not come out as vivid depending on the paint that you're using and how pigmented it actually is. So let me get started. Of course, you'll need paint brushes and water and sandpaper also. I'm not going to be showing you sanding it, of course, if you need to, and because you know how to sand and you know how to apply a coat of gesso. The gesso I used was a Liquitex clear gesso. It's just my personal favorite because it has a grit to it. It's just something I like for working with clay. Use whatever gesso you have on hand. And for those of you who don't know, what the gesso does essentially is it seals the clay, so when you add your paint, the clay doesn't absorb the paint. So you end up using less paint in the long run. So, alright, so we'll need our clay. We need quite a bit for this project because, as you can see, this is about 1/4 inch thick. So let me just put that there out the way. It would be great if everyone watching would share the live feed so we can get as many people watching and interested in our fabulous clay. So take a minute to share. It would be greatly appreciated. Our customers are our best source of advertising. Oh, and Happy New Year to you. I actually forgot it was a new year because nothing's changed since last year. It's just like, you know, one never-ending circle. So I'm just gonna knead this a bit. And I'm kind of molding it into a long shape because I'm gonna roll it that way to get a nice long piece. Now, if you're worried about keeping your clay even as you roll it, one option is if you have like a piece of wood about 1/4 inch thick, or these are kind of small, but if you have the longer ones, you could glue them together like this. I wouldn't recommend a glue gun though, because that adds space, you know, more height to it. Use regular wood glue and glue a couple of them together, and you can put them beside it like that. Like I said, if you had the bigger ones, like the tongue depressor size, it would easily, like, just build it up to 1/4 inch, and then you have something to gauge how thick your clay is. Rulers can work as well, maybe those big wooden rulers, the very thick ones, or pieces of wood, or anything else you can think of that you have two of the same size to use as a guide. So what happens here is when I'm rolling it, when I reach the point of that, it's even on both sides because the rolling pin won't go any further than those two sides. So that's one option if that really matters to you. I'm not too bothered right now for this purpose of this demonstration, so I'm just going to go ahead and roll mine out. You want it as long as possible because it's easier to cut off a piece. You can't really add a piece, so that's good enough for me. You'll also need a craft knife or some kind of sharp X-Acto knife, wood cutter, whatever you have to trim the clay. I swear my cat's hair is in everything. And it's a good idea if you're worried about you know, a straight hand, to use a ruler as well when you're cutting. So for this next step, what I'm doing is I'm gonna put this down in my clay and I'm gonna gently roll over it. I don't want to push too hard because I don't want to flatten the clay too much more. And then I lift it up and look at that beautiful design, and I just move it down to here, and I do the same thing. And I'm just going to continue to there. And there we go. So I'm going to put that aside, and the next thing I'm going to do is just trim along the edge of where my pattern stopped. So wherever the pattern ended, you can just go ahead and trim right along the edge right there, and just remove that excess clay. And I'm going to do the same on this side. I'll probably go back over that side. I'm not pressing too hard because I don't want to cut the silicone mat that I have under the clay. Now the cleaner your edges, the less sanding you'll do later on. So it's a good idea to tidy them up now as much as possible, just as if you were doing an art doll sculpture or anything else for that matter. I'm actually going to cut right here because it has a little nick, and hopefully it will be long enough. It should be. And then what I'm going to do now is flip it over, and then I'm going to dip my fingers in some water and rub the back. This is so when we roll it, the clay actually sticks to itself as we roll it up. You move this out the way, and let me put up this clay. Remember, it's an air dry clay and it will dry out, so you might just want to put that away. So here we go. So all we do is gently, we don't want it to break. It might break a little bit in the inside bit, as you can see, but as the roll gets bigger, it won't break. And then we're just kind of, you know, gently push it down so it sticks. Now we're going to do the same on the other side. Now one side needs to be bigger than the other, as you can see here, because the bigger side is where the phone is going to lean against. So you want to roll it up like that, and then make sure you've left enough space for your phone. What I did was I used an ink pad because and just measured it because my phone has a thick case on, as I said before. So the next step now is to just gently hold it and grab your water, dip your finger in it, and just smooth those edges. We're not holding it too hard because we don't want to press down and ruin the shape or the pattern or anything like that. Now once you're happy with that, you can put it aside to dry. Now to prevent it rolling out like that, what I did is I put mine to dry face down first, and then I flipped it over after a few hours. Or I mean, you can bake it also in a low oven, like about 220 Fahrenheit, or 250 I think is the maximum, and like for 20 minutes at a time, and that can help dry out the clay. You don't want to go much higher than that temperature though, because you don't want to burn the clay. It is a paper clay, the fibers are paper. So another tip I have for you is If you find that when you turn it down, you get a little indentation here, like it gets a bit flat, one way to avoid that is if you have a piece of sponge, you can just turn it down on the sponge like that, and it will cushion it and prevent it from losing its shape. Being it's a circular shape, you can take that precaution. And that's it. You put that aside to dry. And as I said, you can do it in the oven if you like, or you can just leave it under a fan, or depending where you live. I usually leave mine under a fan because it's very humid here and it dries out overnight. Alright, so let me put that one aside. And I have one here that is already done. I sanded the edges and I applied a coat of gesso. This one came out a bit crooked, but that's okay. We'll make it work. It's still fine. So, as I said, I sanded it where it needed sanding. I added gesso. I had a little crack that I filled in with clay. You don't even notice that it's there. So for this part, you add just a bit of the glazing medium, and then a drop of clay. A drop of paint, sorry. Yeah, the paint is quite nice. I like this paint a lot. I find that their paints are very great for working with clay. And then you just mix it. Make sure it's thoroughly blended. And then we're going to paint it on. You also want to have a paper towel nearby, or a soft cloth that you don't mind getting the paint on. And you pretty much just paint it on like that. If you want it darker, you can add a little bit more paint. If you want it lighter, you can add a little less. So I'm going to give it a thin coat to start with. It's very hard. You have to be patient getting down into these little areas under here. But it's definitely worth it in the end. You'll have to paint underneath as well, but it's better to wait for the top to dry first. Otherwise you're gonna make a mess of your craft mat. But that's up to you. I'm impatient, so sometimes I go ahead and make the mess. And I'm just gonna let this paint sit here for a bit. And just make sure I get into all those little spots that are hard to reach. Just kind of move it around, because every time you turn it at another angle, you find that you see another spot that you missed. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to go ahead and be lazy and do the underneath, or impatient rather. Now bear in mind that this is Creative Paperclay, so you're going to have to keep your phone holder away from water. I do recommend that you give it a couple layers of varnish. It will help to make it harder and help protect it from splashes and spills. Any acrylic varnish will do. Some people use polyurethane. but I find that it tends to yellow over time. So if that's something you don't mind, then you can go ahead and use that. But whichever varnish you use for your other sculptures is quite fine for this. Alright, so I'm just going to put that aside for a minute, and I am going to just gently just wipe it off. And what happens here, we don't want to push too hard, but we don't want to pull out the glaze. So any area that is raised, we're wiping off a little bit of the glaze. The glaze stays down in any area that's indented. So I'm just ever so lightly doing that. If I push down, I'm going to take off everything, and then I'll just have to add more again. I mean, it's not a big deal to add more, but it's just easier just to go very gently and wipe it like that. The same goes for underneath. You see how beautiful the pattern is when the glaze stays down in it like that? It really brings out all the texture. And then once you've finished wiping this off, you put it aside to dry. I would let it dry overnight. And then you can go ahead and add your varnishes. And that is pretty much all there is to it. It's a very quick and easy project. It can definitely be done in a day if you bake the clay. It's a great one. You could even do it with your kids, grandkids, summer camp project, or anything really. So it's definitely an easy one. And I'm just seeing here a comment that the camera was blurred. My camera is showing clear, so I'm not sure what that is, if it's bandwidth or something. At what point was it blurred? Do you want me to go over it? Anybody have any questions, or do you need me to go over a section that was blurred? Okay, it fixes it. Okay, so it was probably just a focusing thing. Okay, no problem. Well, that's about it. Next month I'm gonna be doing a Creative Paperclay heart-shaped dish, so that should be fun. We can do that for Valentine's Day. So it will be the first Thursday of the month. Let me just take a quick look what date that is. So it will be February 4th. So that will be right in time for Valentine's Day. We'll do a heart-shaped bowl made with Creative Paperclay. So be sure to mark your calendars and share that with everybody. And it will be at the same time, 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific time. So if there are no more questions, I will just wrap it up now and say thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for your support, and I look forward to a new year of Clay Talk. Thanks and goodbye.